calling this meeting to order. Waters Issues Subcommittee. It's Tuesday, September 6, 2022. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Rusing.
Here.
Member Montoya.
Here.
Member Sischka.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize Mr. Jim Lamerson.
Thank you.
And also we have Ms. Sandy Griffiths in the audience, too. And I'd like to say that our Public Works Director is Zooming the meeting from home. He'd like to be here, but unfortunately he can't.
Good morning, thank you.
Any public comment?
I think the public comment it's the direction for public comment.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Exactly.
You're right. I keep thinking.
I don't want you
we
to get in
have-
trouble with Sarah.
I want to, yeah, I know. Okay. Public comment. Public comment will be accepted following each agenda item and limited to 3 minutes. Please complete a comment card and return it to city staff. Speakers will be called in the order received.
All right, we're going to move on to discussion and action items. Approval of the August 2nd, 2022 meeting minutes.
Does anyone have any comments or changes?
No, but I move approval.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 4B. 1 moment.
Okay. You mean 5?
Pardon?
Item 5?
Oh, we're on B.
We're on 4B.
4B.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have the wrong.
2022 Water Management Policy Discussion. Current residential and non-residential water budget overview for July 1st, 2022 through August 26th, 2022.
Thank you.
Good morning, Katie Hine, Public Works. Presenting just an update as to where we are on our current water budget as of the 26th of August. We have had only one application approved for residential at 11.1 acre feet per year. This project was approved by City Council earlier in July. We've also had a total of 7 non-residential projects approved, equating to 10.33 acre feet per year. Of those, 3 were approved at City Council as well. So on the screen, I've got the one multifamily project or residential project that was approved. And then on the next page, we have the, oh, why is that not coming up? I'm scrolling. There we go. There we go. So of the both water budgets, we still have 14.67 acre feet remaining in the non-residential water budget for this budget cycle. As of right now, the 50% of that is 7.34 acre feet per year. So any projects that come in over that amount would need to either ask for an appeal or wait until the next budget cycle. So right now we still have quite a bit of water remaining. We're not too concerned about exceeding those thresholds at this point in time. We've actually kind of had a slow season, which is unusual for this time of year. We do have a number of projects in the review queue at this time. However, most of them are under existing contracts and so would not be subject to the water budget. We've also approved 13 projects under existing contracts so far. 11 of those are single-family homes located in groundwater subdivisions. And we've had 1 subdivision plat and 1 multifamily complex as well. The subdivision plat was the project that was looked at last month under the Chino Valley Irrigation District. So that's all I have right now.
Any comments?
I have a comment. Can you go over our options once again from the standpoint, if we get a, let's say, a non-residential project that comes in higher than 7.34, what are our options?
So the applicant can either choose to appeal the 50% rule, which have to go
Appeal
through-
to this board?
Yes, to this board,
Okay,
and/or wait until the next budget cycle starts.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. I think when we passed the policy, we made sure that there was an appeal process and that we weren't, it wasn't totally engraved in stone, that we had some flexibility and we could look at each project on its individual merits rather than just assuming it was going to be automatically approved. Mr. Montoya.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. My first question is, can you, and you might not know off the top of your head, so if you don't, it's okay, but can you refresh my memory? We had water left over in the last cycle when we first administered the budget. Is that correct?
We did. I believe it was a lower amount than we have remaining currently right now. I know there was one project that was did wait until the July date to go through due to the amount of water they were requesting. But we did not exceed either budget last time.
And then just to confirm my understanding of something you said a moment ago, which is Public Works staff currently doesn't feel like there's any danger of the threshold being breached on what the current budget is right now.
Not at this time. If development picks up a little bit later in the year, we might see it get close to. We're at about half of both budgets right now. We had a large one come in early on, so that kind of took a lot of the residential water. However, most of the development we're seeing for residential is in existing contracted areas.
Thank you.
And I just like to comment that our water policy is, constantly being reviewed and assessed, and to see if it's functioning the way it is. Okay, any more comments? Okay, thank you.
One second, I'm sorry. Okay, item 4C, focus topic, recharge from Watson and Willow Lake Reservoirs 2022.
Good morning, Leslie.
Good morning, Subcommittee. How's everybody doing? I'm Chair.
Raring to go.
Excellent. Put this on the slideshow. Okay, I was asked to give just a very brief overview today of recharge at Watson and Willow Lakes. So let me see if we can advance the slide, and I'll advance my papers here. So a quick background that's probably familiar is the reason why we have surface water supplies is an acquisition that was done in 1998 related to properties out in the Chino Valley area. So it was the irrigation district itself. Folks had surface water rights as well as other rights. And then next slide is how does it get there? So let's see if this pointer works. So you have Watson and Willow Lakes. They join. This is a little further up than it actually happens, but this is a cartoon. They join, and they're sent out to the recharge facility. We don't have any surface water, of course, coming from the airport facility, and of course, Sundog's also effluent. So we're sticking on the topic of surface water recharge today. You want to follow the blue lines that lead from the lakes and go up to the recharge facility. Okay, so then we wanted to throw in a really fun graph. This one is extremely noisy. So I'm going to just point out what's key here, and this is why I put this into the PowerPoint. This red line across the bottom is the conservation pool. So this is a line that we had been drawn on the reservoir many, many years ago, that they didn't want to bring those water bodies down below that line. And as you would know, an irrigation district would operate those reservoirs differently. They were going to take it all the way down because that's their source of income. The water had to be moving to grow the crops, to sell the crops, to water the cattle, whatever they were using it for, predominantly for crops. More recently, another line was added, and this is the dashed red line through here. This is the operation pool. So the difference here is if you're operating the recharge aspect of this, releasing waters from the reservoir. If you start getting close to this line here, that means that your staff needs to be watching a little more closely as to what's going on, precipitation-wise, you name it, the whole range of operating a water pool. So since we're looking solely at Watson's conservation pool, the red line, is 9.5 feet below the spill. The operation pool is 7.5 feet. So they give themselves 2 feet to work with that they needed to start watching things a little more closely. Let's also look at the trend lines here as well. So if you look at January, you can see January can be all over the place. It can be a full pool. It can be almost at your below your operation. Now, remember that operation pool wasn't put in until probably about 2018, maybe 19 in there. Conservation pool has always been there. So you could start off the year and have quite a range to deal with. And you know that nobody has the crystal ball. So they have to do the best, in-house staff has to talk about, okay, well, what's going to potentially be, what's our forecasting looking like? Once we get to April, right in here, you can see this is where our recharge season starts. So we're moving waters off the water bodies. Come July and August, right in here, you're seeing the uptick happen, and so that's our summer rains, our precipitation. October, our window is still open to move water supplies, so once again, we see a downward draw on those reservoirs. And then December, a whole range, once again. It depends on our precipitation. So looking a little more closely, next slide, I took out a lot of the noise, but there were some key things to look at again. And so you can see the challenges related to operating a surface water body. This blue line here is where we're at today. So it's following that same trend. Luckily, it started high in 2022. It was just kind of probably just evaporating a little bit here, and then the recharge season started. So you're going to see a drop in your pool. Then we had rains, and so it's come back up a little bit. So waters are coming in. Now, if we look at 2017, which is the brown line, there was a hard pool on this, on the surface water body. So once again, we're only looking at Watson on this one. So they were below their operation pool at that point, but still above the conservation pool. So if we track the line to the next year, this is 2018. If you start low and you're kind of bouncing along, you try to do a little bit of recharge, but we're also having evap and recharge at the same time. So this is when you start seeing the questions come in from the public. What's happening to the reservoirs? Why are they so low? So I think 2018 was a pretty good example of, you can only do so much. But if you're watching this line and not this line up here, you don't have much room to maneuver. So 2018, I don't think they had this operation pool in place. So that's a little more gentler view of that graph right here. So overall, you're staying, you drop below your operation, but you never went below your conservation. It's going back up, and then we'll see what it looks like towards the end of the year. Okay, so the question is always how much can be moved. So you can see over time, different amounts have been moved, sometimes none. If we had a really dry winter or dry conditions, none was moved. If there was something going on that limited the movement of water, then that happened as well. So the city may divert surface water supplies from Watson and Willow Lake reservoirs to the recharge facility in a volume between 0 and 3,861 acre-feet per year. So this is what the last few years looked like. So a little less, little less, little less. When can supplies be moved is a common question. So based on the acquisition of Watson and Willow Lakes through the CVID agreement in 1998, the recharge window starts April 1st and ends November 30th. So it maintained that typical irrigation use timeframe. There's always been a question, should the city go back and renegotiate and have opportunities to move the water during the winter time as well, further through those winter months? And then you have a caveat. So even though it says you can't start till April 1st, if they are spilling from the Verde chain, so it's Horseshoe and Bartlett, Down below that in the Phoenix area is Granite Reef. If that Granite Reef area is spilling down in Phoenix because of Bartlett and Horseshoe on the Verde chain, and we're also are full as can be, we can start ahead of time, the recharge. But we need to have that operational call from SRP to do so. But we're also watching at the same time because all this is tracked online. Okay, so where are we at today? So this is a familiar chart to you. I'm not going to look at the lines because that's not your topic right now, but we will look at the green lines, the green bars. So if they're horizontal bars, this is what your surface water recharge is doing. So as compared to last year in gray, you were able to move more. Last year in May, once again, you were able to move more. And then in June, a little bit more. And then also in July, you were able to move more. So we'll see what happens in this time frame here. We're not there yet, so we have to kind of wait for all the data to come in before we can start adding more. And this is your last slide. Ooh, quickly. So if we just look at surface water so far, 1,266 acre feet have been delivered to the recharge facility. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Shishka, do you have any comments?
Did you say that from 0 to 3,481 acre feet was what we could recharge?
Right, that's what's allowed from our surface
Is
water
that a
rights.
maximum even if we can recharge more because of, the spillage in the chain of the lakes?
That's what we're allowed to take off the water bodies. So even if there's more, what you get in difference is instead of in-place recharge is going down channel and infusing the natural creek bed with water. So no, by our surface water rights, 3,861.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Montoya? I have a question, a couple questions. I've read that SRP is thinking about adding another 2 feet to Bartlett Dam. Is that going to affect us in any way?
I brought that forward to our legal staff, and I have pretty much been told that they can do it. Then, I don't know, I think there should be a challenge, better discussions, some operational latitude for us. But I was basically told from legal that they would have to make us whole again somehow. And so I don't know what that somehow is.
Because SRP is a very big player in, I guess, the management of the Verde River and Willow and Watson Lakes.
We just have to follow the surface water laws that have been in place, and they have senior rights. I think the challenge with Bartlett is, thinking further down the line, literally, is if they raise Bartlett, that means it's not spilling as early as it usually would, which means that Granite Reef isn't spilling as early as it usually would. So that limits our abilities up here. Mm-hmm. So, as I said, I posed the question quite a while ago, said we need to be thinking about this. And that's as far as I understand the city's at.
Sounds like it's something that we need to keep an eye on. I'd like to ask you if you could kind of give us a summary as to where you think we're at over this 20-year snapshot. As you know, we've been in a huge drought. Climate change doesn't seem to be letting up, and I see just huge swings every year. You just never know. But is there some kind of a trend that maybe you have noticed over the years?
Well, you hope you notice trends, but then, variables change on you again. So when I was looking at trying to help predict a little bit with operations staff, and this was 8 years ago or more, it looked like every 7 years we could have a hit, like we would have a lot of precipitation. And then when we were watching to see if that would actually play out these are fairly limited records. They look long, but they're actually fairly limited. And surface waters are just known to be flashy. You can't You just kind of get what you get in some cases. So we thought, we'd watch and see if we got a 7-year hit was kind of what we would see. And then it delayed by a year, I think. And so we're like, interesting. So we were watching that pattern at one time. I haven't been extensively involved in this much other than to bring you data on paper. So we can see, well, I don't know. I think the bottom line would be when we look at this from the bigger picture, the Department of Water Resources has very clear graphs on their overdraft dashboard. And they show, and it's typical of the Southwest. You're going to have big spikes some years. So like 83 was a big water year, 93 was a big water year. And you see those kind of things happen. Whether that will continue into the future, like a 10-year big push of water that comes into the state, it's anybody's guess. So I don't have an exact answer.
So just keep conserving, I think, is the message.
I think you watch your conditions the best you can. So if you've had it like recently, we had a huge influx of water come in. Well, then obviously you open up the crosscut and move water over to Willow because Willow is a smaller watershed than Watson's watershed. And then you keep watching, and I firmly believe that was a good choice. I was concerned for quite a while why we only had a conservation pool. There was nothing to trigger staff, when it's 2 feet below or ahead of that conservation pool. So I think that's a good added piece of management. There's probably some more that could be added.
Okay, well, thank you for your constant vigilance.
I would say mostly it's your operations staff that are doing this. I'm not, I bring you numbers at this point. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Down.
We have a comment from the public. Peter Krupnik, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, Peter.
Well, good morning, all. Thank you. My question is, how much of this water that we're recharging is from our wastewater treatment operations versus, I'll say rainfall, but natural? And how does that compare to what we're selling to the golf courses and other major clients? Thank you.
Okay, Leslie.
It's a big question. I'll see if I can get most of that. So I'm sorry, I already shut down the PowerPoint, but as of this point in July 31st, 2022, the effluent side has recharged, or let's just say delivered, 1,000, we'll round it, 500 acre feet. Surface water is 1,000, we'll just round it, 300 acre feet. So they're about neck and neck right now. The next question that he had, besides the amounts, help me out, Mr. Krupnik.
Mr. Krupnik, could you please repeat your question again?
The second half of that is, how does that compare to our sales of wastewater to the golf courses and other customers?
Sales, I would put roughly at this time is probably about the same. I would say that effluent reclaimed, effluent recharged and effluent direct delivery is about the same at this point in the calendar year. So that pushed us up to almost 300 acre feet that if you split it, part of it goes direct, part of it goes to recharge on the effluent side.
I have a question, Leslie, about that topic about the golf courses. Since we've had so much rain, I've had over 7 inches at my house. I assume that the golf course isn't buying as much effluent or using as much effluent.
Honestly, I don't have the data with me today because it wasn't a topic we were going to explore.
Okay,
but
just wondering.
I think that's a fair assumption, although with the need for either direct delivery or taking water off the standpipes, effluent supplies, for the construction that's going on, you might have kind of a balance point right now where some of it's going off to construction for, dust control and things like that versus the golf course, because the golf course is a little more green at this point with the rains.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Peter.
All right, we're on to item 40, discussion regarding the Water Conservation Code Incentive Program and Prescott City Code 3-10-8.
Good morning, subcommittee members.
Good morning.
Morning, Kay.
Kay Sitta with the Department of Public Works. Before I begin this presentation, I wanted to note that the former governor of the state, Bruce Babbitt, in a taped interview with the Citizens Water Advocacy Group a few weeks ago, said that the city of Prescott has the very best rebate program in the state of Arizona. Having spent
Congratulations.
Having spent the month of August surveying my other Arizona municipalities, I can say unequivocally that it's true. We do have the very best rebate program in the state, and we're grateful to the governor for acknowledging our program, and we're going to continue to provide as many rebate options to our City of Prescott customers as we can.
How about that?
Sounds good.
So what we're going to talk about today are toilets, commercial urinals, ultra-efficient washing machines, WaterSense smart irrigation timers, active and passive rainwater harvesting, that's rain barrels and cisterns and rain gardens, and lastly, turf. So we want to take a look at some of the toilet incentives. This chart compares rebates among other Arizona cities, with Arizona always highlighted at the top. I'm sorry, with the city of Prescott always highlighted at the top. We currently rebate a 1.28 gallon per flush toilet at $75 and a 1.0 gallon per flush or a 1.28 dual flush toilet at $100. If the customer is a septic sewer system customer, they get an extra $50 incentive. Scottsdale will rebate up to $75, and Tempe also rebates up to $75 or 50% of the price. Flagstaff only allows a 1.1 gallon per flush toilet for their residential, but they're a little bit interesting in that for a commercial installation, they will rebate up to $86 or 50% of the cost. And for a hotel, they'll rebate up to $158 per unit or 50% of the cost. Peoria will rebate up to $100 with the 3-toilet limit. Now, the way Peoria works, if they say they purchase a $120 toilet, they'll rebate up to $100. If they purchase a $90 toilet, they'll rebate only to $90. And Tucson, like the city of Flagstaff, only allows a 1.1 gallon per flush toilet at $100.
Kay, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry, Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
With Flagstaff, when you were doing your investigation in this, do you have any idea what their logic was behind that system that the like different tiering that they have? Did you have any insight to that?
No, it's just the information they provided to me, and it's it's versus commercial or a hotel for non-residential. It's the information they provided.
Okay, thank you.
So I apologize for the mistake on this slide. There are supposed to be 29 dual flush toilets that were purchased in 2022. So that's been corrected. And I wanted to, this is a comparison of toilet data for the last 6 years of our rebate program. Toilets have always been a very popular rebate. We rebated 403 1.6 gallon toilets at $50 each, 195 dual flush toilets, including the 29 that I left out of the column, and at $100 each, and 84 1.28 single flush toilets. In 2017, Hassayampa Inn installed 47 1.28 gallon per flush toilets, which exceeded the 1.6 gallons per flush recommendation at the time. And also, just to let you know, the City Hall retrofit in 2019, it flushes up at 1.1 gallons per flush and down at 1.6 gallons per flush. This table shows some selected toilet brands and their prices. It's interesting to note, if I can get here we go, that the 1.0 gallon per flush toilets, which range from $326 to $671, actually cost more than the 1.28 single flush or even the 1.0, 1.28 dual flush toilets. And toilet prices will be discussed at the end of this presentation. Are there any questions before moving on?
Continue.
Okay. Commercial urinal incentives. In Prescott, we rebate at $50 for a flushless design, a flush once at specified interval, or a 1 quart per flush. However, the new EPA standard is, the 1 quart per flush exceeds the new EPA standard by 2 times. So we would like to consider adopting that new standard at the end of this presentation. Scottsdale does rebate up to $200 per the cost of the unit, and they are in compliance with the half a quart EPA standard, as is Flagstaff, which will rebate $157 or 50% of the cost of each individual unit. For fiscal year 2017, it's pretty obvious. That for the last 6 years of our fiscal year program, it's pretty obvious that commercial urinals have not been very popular. In 2017, Embry-Riddle replaced these 5 urinals for $250. And urinals in the City Hall retrofit in 2019 use less than 125 gallons per year. We wanted to compare urinal prices. So the average of these prices is about $232. At $50, the rebate is about 22% of the cost, our Prescott rebate. Because our current commercial urinal rebate is for only $50, this will also be up for consideration at the end of the PowerPoint. Are there any questions before we move on? Okay.
Go ahead.
Washing machines. Prescott provides a $200 rebate for a washing machine and an additional $50 for customers on a septic system. Tucson also provides a $200 rebate, Avondale $100, and Flagstaff will rebate 50% of the cost. Now, Flagstaff doesn't actually put it on its rebate form. They consider it unusual. But if they're going to rebate at 50%, they could be rebating as much as $400 to a Flagstaff city customer, and maybe even higher. All washing machines must be on the list provided by the Consortium for Energy Efficiency, and that's true for all the different cities. Washing machines were introduced in fiscal year 2020. And we can see that we've got, it's proven to be a very popular rebate for the city. And we've had 145 customers participate in the washing machine rebate. And this is kind of interesting factoid that I found on a Whirlpool website. They say the average Consortium for Energy Efficiency approved front-load washing machine uses 14 gallons per cycle, as compared to the standard washing machine of 20 gallons per cycle. This is a savings of 6 gallons per cycle. If the average family, and we're talking about 2.3 persons per housing unit here, washes 200 loads of laundry a year, this is a savings of 1,200 gallons a year. And if the average washing machine lasts 10 years, this is a water savings of 12,000 gallons over a decade. This price comparison table includes a range of $728 for a Samsung, up to $1,099 for another Samsung, both available at Home Depot. But many of these washing machines are available at multiple stores. Which model a particular customer will choose probably varies with personal preference as much as it does with cost. And of course, all of the machines listed here are on the Consortium for Energy Efficiency list. There are 192 washing machines on that CEE list. Now, not all of them are going to be locally available. Some of them are probably only found in Canada. But it is an extensive list, and there ought to be plenty to choose from. Oh. Are there any questions before we move on from the washing machines? The WaterSense Smart Irrigation Timers. Outdoor water use timers can save 7,600 gallons of water per device. The City of Prescott offers a $75 rebate for both residential and non-residential. Avondale's a little bit cheaper at $50, but if you look at the other cities, Buckeye, Surprise, Tempe, Scottsdale, Chandler, their dollar rebate amounts are much higher than ours. Mesa's kind of interesting. Their non-residential rebate can be up to $12,500, but the customer has to purchase a minimum of $500 in equipment. All of the timers must be EPA approved and use local weather data or soil moisture sensors. And we have an EPA website there at the bottom where a customer can look up to see if their product is on the EPA list. And to earn the EPA WaterSense label, irrigation controls are independently certified to meet specific criteria for efficiency and performance. In fiscal years 17 through 19, it was required to install an automatic timer, a backflow prevention device, and an entire drip system irrigation. So the gallons saved for this program was about 27,010 gallons. But it's replacing the entire system. So the components in a typical irrigation system include the controller, the valves that are going to alternately open and close to allow water to pass through, the sprinklers, and soil moisture data or local weather data. In fiscal years 20 through 22, when the rebate was changed to an irrigation timer, which must use local weather data or soil moisture sensors, be easy to use, and be EPA approved, then the gallons saved factor was reduced to 7,600 gallons saved per unit. 53 customers in fiscal years 20 through 22 applied for this rebate. A brand comparison and costs from various stores shows that most of these systems are fairly inexpensive. In fact, at a $75 rebate by the City of Prescott, these two orbits would almost cover more than half of the cost. But the price does vary depending on the number of zones. It gets more expensive the more zones that there are.
Kay, I have a question.
Yes, please.
You know, you mentioned the soil monitors. When the monsoons come, does that automatically turn the unit off, or do you have to physically go out there and just turn it off during monsoons?
It's my understanding that it's automatic.
Oh, okay.
And that it's in there, just go, we're getting a lot of rain, let's
Okay.
shut off.
Good, because there's always those stories where the sprinklers are going full blast and it's pouring rain.
I have seen a couple of houses like that, but I'm guessing they don't have a rain or an irrigation timer.
Well, that's a good thing to have.
So moving on to active rainwater harvesting, which are rain barrels or cisterns. Prescott currently rebates at 50 cents per gallon of storage, and that can be in any combination. They could have two 50-gallon tanks, they could have two 100-gallon tanks, as long as they don't exceed the $500 maximum. Flagstaff also allows $100 for a 1,000-gallon capacity minimum. It can also be in any combination. And their maximum rebate is also $500. Incidentally, we raffled a 50-gallon rain barrel at the Home and Garden Show in early May, and the woman in the picture there is our winner.
Oh,
For fiscal years 2017 through 2022, the numbers have been fairly consistent. The dollar amount is going to vary with the size of the tank, so no two rebates are going to be the same. And in 2018, the Prescott Library installed a 1,000-gallon rain barrel, and that is right here. I do want to mention that if someone exceeds their $500 maximum capacity of the rebate, but if the storage capacity is larger than that, they'll still get extra gallons saved to show that additional amount of savings or storage beyond the original amount. This price comparison table shows that it's not hard to find a rain barrel. Many stores offer them at a variety of costs and gallon size. I threw in this 265-gallon Walmart 1047 monstrosity, but did not include it in the price range, as that would have skewed the amount way too high. But this topic is also going to be discussed near the end of the presentation.
looks like there's all kinds of different styles to match your home and your personal tastes.
There are. You're right. The Rain Garden Incentive. We are the only city in Arizona that offers a rain garden incentive. The basin footprint must be a minimum of 50 square feet to capture 400 square feet of rooftop water. We are allowed $3 per square foot of basin footprint. There's a $500 maximum. And by the way, that 1,000-gallon rain barrel that we saw 2 slides ago, whoops, go back down. That water is piped underground to this landscaped area here at the library. We also have a copy of our Arizona Department of Water Resources low water use and drought tolerant plant list, and you can find it here on the Arizona Department of Water Resources website. The rain garden rebate, well, it hasn't been used very often, to say the least. Nothing in 2017, 2018, or 2019. There was one in 2020 and another in 2022. But the rain garden manual has been redone. It's got some better instructions and some really colorful photographs. It's been on the city website for about 2 months now, and I'm really hoping that we can encourage more customers to pursue this option and create their own rain garden. Oh, and it's available on our website at this site right here. Oh, need to go up. Any questions about rainwater harvesting or rain garden rebates? No? Okay. Moving on to turf, and this is a big one. The city rebates turf at 50 cents per square foot for both residential and non-residential, with a 200 square foot minimum for residential and a 1,000 square foot minimum for non-residential. But it's been suggested that perhaps we should remove this minimum rebate and allow a Prescott customer to remove any amount of a square foot of turf that they would like, regardless of the size. But that will be also discussed later on. Flagstaff and Tempe both rebate at 25 cents per square foot. Tempe has an interesting additional rebate, though. If they remove grass between the sidewalk and the street, they get $1 per linear foot. Surprise rebates at 50 cents per square foot like we do, up to $3,000. But what is also interesting about Surprise is they have this new home Xeriscape. They will give a new homeowner $200 to put Xeriscape in their yard. Mesa has a $500 and 500 square foot minimum for residential, and a $5,000, 1,000 square foot minimum for non-residential. This is a continuation of the previous slide. Scottsdale will rebate up to $2 per square foot with a 5,000 square foot minimum. And this was just passed by their council a couple months ago. It was $1 before this. And they will rebate non-residential up to $20,000 or 25% of the cost. Avondale's kind of interesting too. They will give somebody $200 if they redo their front yard or their backyard, and $400 if they do the front and the backyard, and $200 for non-residential with a 1,000 square foot minimum. Glendale has a residential rebate with a 1,000 square foot minimum, and the incentive ranges from $150 to $750. And their non-residential is $150 per each 1,000 square feet. So that's $150 for each 1,000 square feet. Buckeye has a rebate of $100 with a 200 square foot minimum, and $200 non-residential with a 500 and over square foot minimum. A total of 79 turf removal projects have been completed over the last 6 years. Again, the numbers are fairly consistent. There is going to be variation due to the amount of square footage removed and the number of gallons that have been saved. And Prescott High School in fiscal year 2021 replaced its grass football field with artificial turf. And the water savings here, almost 3.8 million gallons, which is about 11.6 acre feet.
And that's per year, right?
Yes, that is per year.
Cumulative
So it's
effect of
cumulative.
that is outstanding.
It is. So I wanted to give you an idea of what 500 and 1,000 square feet look like. So 500 square feet is equal to about 2.5 parking spaces, and 1,000 square feet is equal to about 5 parking spaces. And this area on the right in the photograph, that's about 3,244 square feet, which is the equivalent to about 13 parking spaces. So there aren't many places in the city that have grass or weeds in between the city and the street and the sidewalk. And in fact, this one doesn't even fit because it's between the sidewalk and a fence. But this is the southwest corner of Wetstein and Demers Avenues. This building on Miller Valley Road, well, it's a candidate for turf removal. And we'll leave it at that.
Is that the bank? Yeah, the Wells Fargo Bank.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'd like to say something about the turf. To me, there's two kinds. There's ornamental turf and then what I call working turf, where if the turf is used for public gatherings or community gatherings, like around an HOA office or community center or something. And then there's ornamental, which Tempe has addressed, where it's that dead man's zone between the curb and the sidewalk. And I've seen apartment complexes that'll have that little strip of grass and the sprinklers are going and it's running into the street. And there's absolutely no reason why they couldn't replace that with Xeriscape and some attractive rocks and still maintain the working grass. And it would save a lot of money.
Agreed, Mayor Pro Tem, definitely. So this chart represents the average gallons saved on an annual basis over the last 6 years. And if we want to break it down a little bit, The turf here, that's almost 850,000 gallons saved, followed by toilets at about 773,000 gallons. And the next one is this 243,000 for rainwater harvesting. Drip irrigation, a little over 103,000 gallons saved. And the washing machines at almost 95,000 gallons saved. Recall that the washing machines weren't introduced until 2020, and the washing machine also rebates in gallons saved at 4,100 gallons, and so it's the lowest one that we have on our list. Note that the biggest water savings occurs with turf and rainwater harvesting and the drip irrigation combined. So there's an annual average of 2 million gallons of water has been saved. And as you just mentioned, Mayor Pro Tem, all of these devices and equipment continue to save water each year. So it's all cumulative, and this is just a snapshot of the 6-year average. So I'd like to take a minute to explain this graph. So here in column 1, we have all of our incentives listed with the current incentive amount next to it. So you may recall that a 1.28 gallon toilet will rebate for $75, and our 1.0 gallon or our 1.28 dual flush toilet will come in at $100. $50 for the urinals, $200 for washing machines, $75 for irrigation timers, 50 cents per gallon for the rain barrel, $3 per square foot for rain garden, and turf at 50 cents a square foot. Then we wanted to compare it to the percentage of costs. So this is what this third column is. Whoops, went back on me there. This is going to be our recommended incentive here, change or no change, and to what we might want to change it to. And then this column, this final column, is the percentage of cost based on some of those higher prices that we've seen on the market. We're aiming for 20 to 40% of rebate dollars for each one of these different incentives. And we do try to put an emphasis on outdoor devices because they do have a higher water savings. So I thought perhaps we would take them.
Mr. Shishka?
Oh,
Thank you, Chair. I totally would support increasing some of the rebates, but the question I have is, we have $40,000 in the budget for rebates.
that's correct.
How close have we come in recent years to that $40,000?
I forgot to bring my list up here, but I do have that information. Give me just a second.
You took my question. Oh, sorry about
Guys
that.
are mind readers here.
I have more.
So in fiscal
I figured
year
that.
17, we rebated a little over $14,000, but that's because at the time, toilets were $50
Okay.
and not $100 or $75. And we also did 9 irrigation timers back then, so that was, a $75 rebate, but it's not very much.
Yeah.
So for those 3 years, so then fiscal year 18, we rebated a little over, almost $16,800. And in fiscal year 19, we came up with $18,360. But then things changed when we increased our rebate amounts. So in 2020, we rebated $39,500. In fiscal year 2021, we rebated $46,776. So that year we exceeded it, and we never put a limit on it. We don't say, oh, stopped at 40,000. We go ahead and allow people to put more money. We put more money in the system. And in fiscal year 2022, which just ended at the end of June, we had $38,680 rebated to our customers.
So let me ask you this. What are your feelings about why the last 3 years were so far over the previous years you mentioned?
Well, because, well, for one thing, because people only had to purchase an irrigation timer instead of putting an entire new system. So that was a huge difference. There was a big uptick in the number of people who purchased an irrigation timer as opposed to the first 3 years of 2017 through 2019. So that's one explanation. Do you,
Deputy Gwen.
Good morning, members
Hi.
of the subcommittee. We believe a large part of why 2020 was so big, it was primarily because of COVID. People were home, they were remodeling in their homes, they were more aware of what's in their homes because they were home more. I mean, that was the reality
Yeah,
of
we
2020.
know.
Most people, not myself, but most people were home in 2020. And so we believe that that's why 2020 we saw such a big uptick. But then we've also made great strides in public works to be out there promoting water conservation. We've been doing a lot more outreach in different ways since 2020 than we had historically in the past. We would go to public events, and that does send the message as well, but we've been doing other forms of public outreach. So we think that's been helpful as well.
Okay.
and the washing machines were introduced in fiscal year 20. So those were $200 each. And that was a very popular program also, the washing machines.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Brandon.
Thanks. I like this rebate program. I like the way Prescott does water conservation generally. I think Governor Babbitt was right to give us kudos for that because I think we execute on this idea that has always been an axiom I've heard, which is incentivize what you want more of. That's the rebate program. And then tax what you want less of. That's the tiered water rate system. So I think we deliver well on both sides of that. I think that's why our water conservation works well. First question I have for you, are there items that staff considered adding or removing to this list? I know, for instance, part of why this topic is in front of us today is because we were talking about the hot water recirculation system credit or rebate that had seemingly not been used very much but was being adjusted. So can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, that is on our new rebate program.
Yeah.
And it's on the form. And we are already having applicants come in and ask for it.
Oh, good.
But, there isn't enough data with, less than a month.
So, but more broadly speaking, are there items that you think that you saw maybe other communities do that might be interesting to use, or are there items that we have that haven't been used very effectively? Does staff have thoughts on that, I guess?
Well, I did mention the rain garden, but I also spent a lot of time updating the rainwater manual that's now online. And I think it's going to be a lot easier to use and follow. And so I'm really hoping that we will have a lot more customers willing to take on, it's a challenge, a rain garden. But I think with the revised manual that's on the website, that they will maybe consider doing it.
Steve?
Thank you, Chair. You said that we have no problem going over. Like, this last year we did 46,000, or was it the year before? What if that turned into 100,000? Is that, how far are we willing to go in that
There's still a
situation?
maximum rebate, though. See, we're not going to, if we allow someone to, for example, have $1 per square foot, there's still going to be a maximum of $500.
Right, but if more and more and more people took advantage of the rebates, is it what we want, or is there a limit to what we want?
So it's okay if I answer
Sure,
this
go
one?
ahead.
Okay. So when I talk about the rebate incentive program with staff, I constantly remind them that the rebate program is not about money, it's about saving water. Our focus is on saving water. What we do is we try to budget in a range where we think we might end up for that year based on trends from previous years.
Sure.
So as long as we're bringing those recommendations to council, council can approve them as part of, or they do approve them as part of the budget every single year. If we're spending $100,000 on rebates, we're doing an awesome job on conservation. That's my answer to you, because we have to focus on how much water we're saving, not how much money we're spending to get people to do it.
Brandon?
Thank you, Chair. So Gwen, to that, to Councilman Sishka's point, it would seem that it's possible in the next fiscal budgeting cycle that we might need to increase this. Is that your assessment?
We may. Last year, we saw just under 30,000, and we budgeted $40,000 that year. And we'll see how we're trending this year, kind of mid-year, to see where we're at. And we'll make a projection based on where we think we might be for the next, because we start budget in January. We don't actually adopt it till July. So we do somewhat estimate where we think we will be. But if we overrun that line item, we just move monies from other projects to cover it. So we do not turn away anyone for rebate.
So I have a question about the outreach that Kay was talking about. I'm wondering, it's been like 3 or 4 years since I bought a washing machine, but I'm wondering, do we work with the local stores like Lowe's and Home Depot to have marketing material there to let people know when they're going to purchase that? They're like something that says, hey, you could get an additional amount back?
Well, other than being really busy getting this presentation ready these last couple of weeks, I actually intend to do that very thing. I'm going to make I'm going to print out the CEC list of approved washing machines. I'm going to put it in some Mylar, and I'm going to take them over to Maytag, Home Depot, and Lowe's. And now that I have a little bit of breathing time, I intend to do that this week on my way home, because they're both on my way home. And I'm going to also provide, of course, a rebate application, and I'm going to try to find the manager and say, look, this is what we want you to start doing. When you know that it's a City of Prescott water customer, can you please let them know they should choose from this list?
Yeah,
I think that they get the rebate.
I think that's great, and I think it's, all that outreach that you're talking about. I know, the rain barrel thing was at the home show. I think those are great things, but I also think there's some power if I'm a consumer and I'm at Home Depot and I say, well, I know that I want to buy this washing machine or this one, and then if I know that I'm going to save, X amount of dollars over here on this one, it gets me right where I'm, sometimes people are in the moment immediacy. I didn't buy the washing machine I own, my wife did, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay. Well, have you checked to see if it's on the list?
I think it is. It is, but you'd have to ask her. She would know better than I.
Okay.
The other question I had was about the library rain barrel and do we have signage over there around that, talking about that?
Well, at the library viewery for Water Awareness Month in March, or April it was rather, I made big signs highlighting Skyview School and the library both, and they were in the viewery. And I take it that you probably didn't make it over there.
No, I didn't, but I've seen that rain barrel because sometimes I get caught on my phone and I'll be walking behind the library when my son is in the library. Mm-hmm. So I just thought it might be, it's beautiful, the little garden thing there and the rain barrel. And so it just would seem to me something to maybe staff could consider is putting a sign there to kind of at least kind of talk about, hey, there's more about this than meets the eye. That's just a thought.
Right. Well, it was up for a month during Water Awareness Month at the library viewery.
Yeah.
If I could go back to your question about did staff consider taking anything off the list or adding anything to the list?
Sure.
I will tell you that when Kay did her extensive outreach of other communities, we did look at what other folks offer. We have the most extensive list in the state. Mm-hmm. We are going to recommend some changes to our rebates and some of the criteria for some of our rebates to make them easier for people to take advantage of. But as for removing anything from the list, even if 1 or 2 people use it, they've still saved water. So we'd like to leave the things on the list. I do think there are some areas where staff could do better. We're going to try to make a concerted effort toward facilities that install urinals and actually reaching out to them as opposed to waiting for them to come to us. As well as the rain garden. We think we can work with some of our local partners to get some more information out there in terms of the Rainwater.
I would imagine that a certain executive director of Yavapai County Contractors Association might be able to get you connected to some landscapers to talk more about that kind of stuff. Just a thought. Can you talk, either of you, about what the outreach on turf looks like? I run every day by Wells Fargo, or at the bank, I should say, and I notice it, and it always occurs to me, and I'm a customer of that bank, and so I've thought, but I've also worked in finance for years, and I know sometimes that those decisions are made in a centralized system as opposed to the local system. And so I'm curious, have we had engagement with other, not that specific one, but just generally with these turf, and maybe there's just not that many opportunities that exist with turf remaining.
I think there are many opportunities for turf removal, but remember, when it comes to conservation, everybody does their bit in a different way, right? And so we're not asking everyone in the community to remove all of their turf. Some people may want turf because they have animals, or they may want turf because they have small children, or they just have a little bit of grass in their backyard, and that's okay, as long as they are looking at conservation in other ways, right? Because as long as they do their bit, if they have, a hot water recirc, or they replace their toilets, or they, only water certain times of the day, that everybody has to do their part in whatever way they can do their part. But to your point, we put some pictures up on the screen that show grasses that really aren't used. To Mayor Pro Tem's point, there are grasses and things that we just look at. Is that the highest and best use of water? I don't know. That person or that entity or that business may or may not be doing their bit in a different way. So we just try to get the message out that this is a way that you can help do your bit a little bit more. And so I think it's up to the city to not just always wait for people to come to us to ask for a rebate. We need to be out there selling it, educating people about it, and getting them to spread the word amongst each other. Hey, did you know if you replace your toilet, the city will give you $100, right? So I think that's the message.
And if I may say, when I had the commercial urinal slide up, I did forget to say that yours truly will be out beating the streets in the next few months, going around to hotels, businesses, and similar facilities, and seeing what kind of commercial urinals they do have in their buildings, along with toilets, of course, and seeing if we can't convince them to, put in something that's EPA approved.
Okay, I have a question. Speaking of urinals, we have a new jail going in, and I assume they're going to be using a lot of urinals there. They're using city water, even though it's a county facility. So have we made any contact with them? I don't know how far along they are in their construction as far as what they're going to install, as far as toilets, urinals.
Well, I haven't.
Showers.
But I thank you for the suggestion, and I will follow up on that, Mayor Pro Tem.
Because I think that, they're going to be a pretty serious water user with their population build out of, I think, 600 inmates. And I think it's getting in on the ground level, making them aware of what they could be doing to save water.
Well, if it's okay with you, I'd like to take each one of these rebates one by one so that we could discuss them. And that's all right. So right now, we do have a toilet incentive at $75 for 1.28 single flush, and $100 for a 1.0 gallon per flush or the dual flush toilet, 1.0, 1.28. And currently the percentage of cost is 37% for the single flush and about 48% for the dual flush and the 1.0 gallons per flush. So right now we're recommending no change because we were aiming for anywhere between 20 and 40%, and this toilet actually exceeds the 40%. So is this something we would like to discuss?
Sure.
Do you want to recognize
Oh, I
Sandy?
think Sandy. Sandy from Yavapai County Contractors Association is here.
Subcommittee Chair, good morning, committee members. Sandy Griffiths, Yavapai County Contractors Association. I don't mean to hijack what
no,
Kay is
please.
doing. Thank
No.
you.
Of course.
Mr. Couch, good morning on Zoom. I hope you're feeling well this morning. So last week, I had the privilege of being invited over to Public Works to look at the preliminary slide presentation that you're seeing this morning. And our short meeting was an hour and a half. So we had great conversation. And I'd like to make a few comments this morning, particularly on the toilets and the turf components. As you've heard from Gwen this morning and Kay as well, it's not all about money. The end goal is to save water. And Public Works, the city of Prescott, they're doing a great job, which you've already seen from these slides. I think with some other considerations, we can do even a better job. So with the toilets, we had some conversation, and I would like to see or recommend that we increase that rebate $100 for the 1.28 single flush, $125 for the 1.0/1.8 dual, and $150 for the 1.0 single flush. This gives our homeowners and consumers a larger option arena to choose from. We don't know what's going to happen unless we try it. And again, money's not the object, it's saving water. And I think we'll find that there could be some very exciting, more rebates taking on with toilets, and we won't know unless we offer that. So that's a recommendation coming from the industry. Plus, it's flexible. It gives that flexibility, whatever a homeowner wants to do. I just purchased 2 new 1.8 single flush toilets. Magic. Everybody should have them. They're awesome. So the other item to talk about is turf. I love and support the idea that the city wants to recommend an incentive increase of $1 and also to remove the minimum size requirement. After our meeting last week, I reached out to the industry, the landscapers. Friday, immediately, I heard back from one very large landscaper. This morning, I had 2 emails from 2 others. And their ideas are not only to offer an incentive to remove grass, but offer an incentive to install turf. So you've got a dual incentive process going on. And in talking with Mr. Couch via
Artificial
Zoom,
turf, right?
Artificial turf.
Yeah, artificial turf,
Sorry,
yeah.
artificial. You know what I meant.
Yeah.
Artificial. So, and it would be installing artificial turf or de-incentivizing grass. And that could be a pretty interesting component to work and deal with as well. So that's a recommendation coming from the industry that we would like to see moving forward, because again, you don't know if it's going to work unless you offer it. And I know Kay is beating the streets like crazy, but I have other ideas for marketing incentives as well to really get this program out there, to bring it forward to our community and the people involved. One last comment, please. Instead of taking the incentive and apply it to water bills, which I understand has been done in the past, I would like to see the homeowner getting a check. That is a good form of marketing. They can use these funds as discretionary spending because the folks and homeowners going with these rebate programs, they're not having trouble paying their water bills. They don't need that credit. Let's give them a check and they can go spend more money in our community.
Go out to dinner or something.
Absolutely.
Brandon?
Thank you, Chair. I want to agree with Sandy's last point there pretty strongly. I think there's a lot of power when you write someone a check as opposed to, like, I don't, again, going back to my personal situation, I don't pay our water bill, my wife does. And so if we were to get a rebate, I would never see it. But if I got a check, I'd probably actually be able to use it.
$100 check, yeah.
$100 check could buy a lot of things for me. So
Definitely a positive reinforcement. Sandy, I have a question. We're focusing on individual homeowners here. What about our Phoenix builders, our mass production builders? What are they putting in their homes? Are they
Most of them are the 1.8 single flush toilets, and that is on my outreach list as well, to sit down and have another meeting with Kay to talk about how we can influence these folks into installing urinals. We've got 2 major construction projects taking place, moving dirt right now. Kay needs to put her boots on and get in the dirt and go talk to them. But we can help do that.
Yeah.
Because, again, it's all about saving water. That's our goal.
Yeah, because I think that'd be interesting to partner with the Phoenix home builders if they're not already doing it, but emphasizing how important it is, because this is all voluntary. We're not mandating anything at this point. Anyway.
Now, talk about voluntary and being a partner. With one of Kay's slides where they were offering a $250 incentive for new xeriscape landscaping.
200.
200. Mm-hmm. So my light bulb went off. We should go partner with landscapers, have them offer an additional incentive should you desire to use my company for xeriscape landscaping. We will match that incentive. So saving multiple hundreds of dollars nowadays is pretty fantastic to do.
Yes, every little bit helps. Yeah.
So thank you for letting me interrupt.
Thank you, Sandy.
Of course.
Any comments?
Yes.
Steve?
Thank you. I'm looking at the action here, and it says move to recommend forwarded and proposed modifications. What I'm wondering is this time sensitive, this whole thing?
No, not especially. We would like to take it to council in a few weeks, but if you want to make recommendations today, you could. If you feel like you need more time to consider it, you could do that too.
It just sounds as though some more conversations with industry would help to nail this thing down to where we all felt really, really positive. I mean, not that we don't right now, but we could even feel more positive about our efforts. And, is it, I was just saying, is it totally, is it a timely thing, or is it we need to get it right?
Oh, well, we would certainly want to get it right, definitely. Sure. Mm-hmm. Should we continue on down the list?
Sure.
To the commercial urinals, right now, we rebate at $50. That's about 12% of the cost. So we'd like to go up to $100 on the commercial urinal and make sure that we adopt the new EPA standard of 0.125 gallons per flush. And this would put us closer to 36% range for the $100 urinals. The washing machines, whoops, go back. Oh, wrong way. The washing machines, we rebate at $200, which, like the city of Tucson, we both have the highest rebate at $200. It's about 22% of the cost, so we're recommending no change because it's a very popular program and it is within that 20 to 40% range. So we're thinking that keep it at $200. The irrigation timer, right now, it comes in at about 40% of the cost. And again, we're recommending no change because the irrigation timers are within about 40% of the cost. Now, when we get to the rain barrels, we're suggesting a tiered approach. So a 50 to 65 gallon tank, which currently rebates between 16 to 32% of the cost, we'd want to go ahead and keep it at 50 cents for now because it's pretty close to the range of not quite 20, but within 32%. That's a good range number. But for a 75-gallon tank and higher, we're thinking we'd like to change that because it falls at 9% to 20%, increase that to $1, and that gets us closer to an 18 to 38% range for that rain barrel slide that you saw earlier, and we'd still keep the maximum rebate at $500. The rain garden, $3 per square foot. Again, that's going to vary, but we're recommending no change to that either. And we've talked about turf. Sandy was very eloquent about the turf, going from 50 cents to $1 per square foot. And as we've noted before, it's not about how much money we spend, it's about how many gallons we save. And we do want to remove that minimum size requirement of 200 square foot minimum for residential and 1,000 square foot minimum for non-residential.
Okay, thank you. Any comments?
Oh, ma'am.
I'd like to just say that I think Sandy had a really good idea about incentivizing artificial turf. I have some artificial turf around my house, and I really like it. And I've heard it can be somewhat expensive to install, so I think that if someone wants to take out their turf and install some artificial turf, I think maybe we could look into incentivizing it and then increasing the dollar amount for the toilets sounds like a good tweak. And then also I like the idea of getting a check. I don't know how expensive that would be, but maybe instead of mailing it out separately, putting it in the water bill to the customer, save postage.
Well, right now that is our best way of rebating it is through the water bill.
Yeah.
And I don't really know how feasible it is to start issuing checks. It's not really how the program is set up to work, honestly.
Yeah, but maybe give them a certificate saying, here's how much you're saving in your water bill.
Well, that's a thought,
Yeah.
and making up a little certificate, especially if we
Yeah,
were to show
this
how many
month.
gallons of water they were saving with their
Yeah.
device.
Yeah, this month you're getting a $100 rebate here in your, so people can see it. Anyway, any comments?
Mayor Pro Tem, I don't have a problem moving forward with the changes to the toilet amounts that Sandy suggested, which I had as $100 for 1.28, $125 for dual, $150 for 1.06. I think those are, I don't think we lose anything by adding that amount, and I think it's a change, enough of a change that we may get some in additional incentivization for folks.
Yeah.
I guess my question for Kay is, I agree with your, with what Sandy was saying about the turf as well. I don't know, my concern is kind of from a procedural standpoint. Can we incorporate some of these changes and then move this forward to council and then have staff continue to kind of sharpen it before it gets to council? Or do we need to have that process happen before we approve it to go to council?
Well, Gwen will be addressing the city council on this, not I. So it would be up to her how she might want to tweak it.
So I think the toilets can easily be added. In fact, when Sandy suggested it to us last Friday, we had no objection because the 1.0 flush toilets are quite a bit more expensive. So we can just make that change to the recommendation. There was another.
The turf, I think, was the other item she talked about.
Oh, the artificial turf, that would require some research on our part. So I think we could probably pull that together before the full council meeting if the subcommittee was comfortable with that, or we can bring it back to you. That is at your discretion.
My thought, the reason I'm asking is because I'm appreciative to what Steve was saying. I want to get it right too, but I also feel like there's some momentum to, I would hate for this to paralysis by analysis type situation where we don't actually move forward to make people incentivized to do this. I think I'd like to see us continue to move forward, and as much as staff is capable of, and it sounds like there's some latitude there to kind of tweak this. And I would certainly encourage you guys to have another sit down with Sandy, especially if she has more feedback to share from an industry perspective. I think she's an asset and a tool to kind of get the message out too. So that's my thoughts.
I would say that some communities require a percentage of the area to be replaced with low water use plants. We're not necessarily recommending that here. And that the removal of the turf is the incentive. To add another incentive on top of that to install a specific product, that would be very unusual based on the research that we've done. So I don't know, unless the cost of artificial turf is exceedingly high, that staff would necessarily even recommend 2 rebates be given for one action item, if you will.
And then also, I think we need to reach out to the county, the city manager, or the county manager, and see where they're at with their installation of fixtures. See if maybe we could catch them before it's too late, and then maybe ask them about rainwater harvesting on their building and artificial turf. I don't know what their landscaping plan is, of course, but maybe kind of nudge them into thinking about that. I don't know if they have or not.
I will follow up with them tomorrow, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, thank you.
And on the rain barrels too.
Yeah.
I guess I would move that we adopt or recommend these to council with the changes regarding the toilets.
We have some public comment.
Oh.
If you're ready for that.
Of course, always ready for
All
public
right.
comment.
We'll start with Peter Krupnik. Go ahead, Peter. Peter?
I needed to click a button. All right. A topic we haven't talked about is showers. There's 2 aspects to that. One, there's just building codes, making sure we put in low-flow shower heads. But on the public class commercial side, I know, for instance, there are little timers that can be put on showers at, say, the Y as an example, that make you push a button every 3 minutes just to remind you that you're using a lot of water. Has that been considered? And it's not just the Y. We have several colleges with gyms and pools. So I can see a fair amount of water being saved there. Thank you.
We did have shower heads on the rebate program in 2019 and previous years, and it's been removed. And I think it just wasn't that popular an item, and that's the reason why it was taken off the rebate program.
All right. Next is Howard Mechanic.
Well, thank you, and I support the water conservation program. I did work on developing the initial water conservation program when I was on the Water Conservation Committee, and we did do extensive studying of each proposed rebate to see how much water it would save versus what it would cost the city. I was a little surprised in the packet. Also, a couple of people have said the focus is on the number of gallons of water saved rather than the amount of dollars rebated. That gives the impression, I think, to the public that cost is no object. And I know Mr. Moore basically said that at council meeting when we were talking about the hot water circulator. He basically said, well, it doesn't matter how much it costs. If I can save some water, I'm going to do it. Now, that's his right to spend.
Are you talking about Mr. Moore?
Council meeting.
Oh, Mr. Moore, okay. I thought maybe you were talking about this meeting today, Mr. Montoya.
Okay. Yeah, it was at the council meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You may recall about the hot water circulator.
Okay.
So I think it's important for the city, consider any city expenditure, doesn't matter what it is, what are you getting for the dollars expended? And that really hasn't been studied here. The public is spending money. Ratepayers are putting in money here. Some of the ratepayers are on fixed incomes, and they're being asked to subsidize some projects that I personally don't think are that effective. But the main point is, Sandy came up with some good suggestions, and I think the city should solicit good suggestions before the point where you're voting on something. It's too late, basically, for me to make any suggestions right now. I just don't think I can go into all the details at this time. It's too late. But I think the city, as Mr. Montoya has suggested, and I think Mr. Shiska suggested, that the city should talk to the contractors. I would like to provide input also, not just from industry. As somebody had mentioned, somebody wants to sell artificial turf, that's okay. But the city shouldn't just get the view of the person who's trying to provide a service for monetary service. The city should solicit other input from people who have suggestions for the future. And I have many suggestions, and hopefully the city will solicit those suggestions. And the one, I can't go to everything, but the one thing I want to talk about is as a suggestion to give an additional rebate for artificial turf. I don't think it's a good idea. Why is it good for the public to incentive? If somebody's removing turf, that's great. But what's wrong with them putting in xeriscape? Why is it better for them to put in turf than xeriscape an area? Why should we incentivize putting in turf? And the second issue is for new construction. My understanding is, developers, contractors, they can't, if they're building 100 homes, we're not giving them an incentive to do anything. We're only giving incentives to people who have water accounts. And I think we're missing out on all new construction. We need to look at that in detail and see how we can provide incentives for new construction. Thank you.
Next is Leslie Hoy. Go ahead, Leslie.
Morning, Leslie.
Good morning, everyone. First, I just want to thank Kay and Gwen and everybody there who's, and even Sandy, for all the efforts on water conservation. It's wonderful to see these efforts happening. I have a comment on the artificial turf. When we put in rain gardens, in addition to saving water, it also has a good impact on water quality. And I'm a little concerned about the artificial turf because when it relates to runoff and we're not recharging anything. And so that should be part of the research if we're going to consider rebates on artificial turf. And then when it comes to Howard's suggestion about getting all the suggestions, I think it would be good going forward to get suggestions, but I'd really hate to see the work that's done so far be held up while we continue to get more and more suggestions. I would support moving ahead with what has already been decided. I probably would support the additional rebates for toilets, especially for the 1-gallon flush toilets. And so I think we should just move ahead, get some of these things done, and then just continue studying the further opportunities for rebates. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Leslie. Good points.
And that is it for public comment. Wait, I'm sorry, one moment. Howard, Mr. Mechanic, did you have another comment?
I just wanted to say that I think maybe a meeting would be better than sending in written suggestions. I would like to be involved in a dialogue, a discussion about some of these issues, because I can make suggestions and then we never know what happened to them. I'd rather have a meeting. I'm sure, with Sandy, you're not just going to take her written suggestions. You want to meet with her in person. I'm suggesting that she go to the meeting. I could go to a meeting. Anybody else can go to a meeting and discuss some of these alternatives, especially for new construction. Thank you.
Those are, that's a very good point, Howard. And I'd also suggest that maybe in preparation for the meeting, you have your thoughts and ideas all printed out and organized so that we don't leave anything out.
Definitely. I agree with you.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I think I had made a motion to move forward with the guidelines, but with changes to the toilets. Again, $100, 1.28, $125 for the dual flush, $150 for the 1.06 is what I have written down.
And I think I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Item 5, general announcements from staff.
So I apologize, Leslie had to step away for another meeting. So I'll just quickly go over the quarterly pumping versus recharge graph. You can see that in the January to July numbers, effluent deliveries, we've done very well. Effluent deliveries are generally lower over the summer months because we're delivering that effluent supply to the golf courses, hand supply, et cetera. The numbers came back up a little bit here in July, and that was primarily because we had a lot of rain. So if they have rain, generally they don't use as much water. And you can see the comparison between the numbers from fiscal year 2022 to 2021. So that's what she's showing here. The surface water deliveries, you can see we do nothing January, February, March, unless the Verde chain is full, like Leslie mentioned in her earlier presentation. So then in April, we started to recharge surface water deliveries. So we had some water in the lakes. That happened through April and May, and then things got a little bit quiet in June, and then in July we started recharging again. And you'll see quite a large number here in August as well. As far as water pumped, summertime is our high water use time. So in the months of May, June, and July, you can see that our numbers are up from the wintertime months. The total water pumped year to date is 4,334 acre feet. The total water delivered to recharge, 2,723. That's a combination of effluent at 1,458 and surface water at 1,266. Are there any questions about the last quarter? Pretty consistent with what we would expect to see, nothing out of the usual here. All right. There was a GUAC meeting on 8/8 of 22. The AMA gave a director's report. There was the groundwater withdrawal fee recommendation. Each year, the city pays a groundwater withdrawal fee based on how much water we actually pump from the ground, and that goes back into programs that help promote water conservation. There was also a statewide planning update, and there was a discussion on overdraft and safe yield in the Prescott AMA. Katie already gave you the water budget overview, but I'm going to have Steve Olfers, our utilities manager, give you a quick overview on what's happening with PFOS and PFOA.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Well, obviously, PFOS is a large topic in our area, and we've been working very diligently to try to get all of our ducks in a row and understand exactly what we have in this situation. We have been announcing through public announcements any of the information that we have coming in. So at this point, we have announced that our Chino wells sampling has been completed, and we received the sample tests, and we did see slight detections in 3 of the 4 wells out there in Chino. We have another well that will be testing Chino 1. It doesn't usually operate because of the arsenic concentration, but we turned it on just to go ahead and see if there is a PFOS issue associated with that. So we sent that out this last week. The results, these are the results that we received from the Chino wells. And then I went ahead and averaged all the different samples we've gotten. So Chino 1 is a slight detect at 3.6 parts per trillion for PFOA, but no detection for PFOS. ADEQ always operates in duplicate, so both these samples were taken at the same time. The next sample was measured at 3 parts per trillion for PFOA and no detection for PFOS. If we average out the ADEQ example, our samples, and ours, we come out to about 3.3 parts per trillion. So that's where we are along the lines with Chino 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we will be doing in-house samples for all these on a monthly basis. We've already collected our August samples, and they will be they're being provided to Legend already, which is our contract laboratory. And those results will be added to our continuing results. We've also started taking results of what our process is actually putting out. So in Chino, the 5 wells run into the 2 different 5 million gallon tanks, and then that water is mixed and sent down to zone 0. So we're also taking samples of that to actually see what our blending process is looking like in Chino. Unfortunately, at the airport, we're not able to blend because the infrastructure isn't there. So, but we are very fortunate in that both well 2 and 3 at the airport came back with no detects after averaging things out. The first sample, of course, at airport 3 was 1.8 parts per trillion, which was right at the detection limit. So we're running 2 as much as possible, 3 as a supplemental at the airport. And our process thought at Chino is to run Chino 4 as much as possible. It's very large, 3,200 gallons per minute, so we can get a lot of water out of there. And Chino 2, which is the lowest of the wells that we have active out there. Chino 3 is being used as making up in case we can't meet demand. Again, that's the next lowest one. So we're kind of trying to mix with well 4 as well as well 2 and 3. Well 5 at Chino and well 5 at the airport are currently not being used unless there's an absolute emergency for demand. So we have from the water side, that's from the safe drinking water side. From the clean water side at the wastewater plants, we've been sampling, we sampled the influent and the effluent at both plants, just to kind of get an idea of what the concentrations are associated there. Prescott Valley beat us to the punch, of course. They came back with samples, but we will be doing the same thing as well. It's not surprising to see some kind of hit for PFOS, the overall PFOS in wastewater. Obviously, a lot of people are using PFOS in their homes, and it goes down the sewer system, and we get to try to handle it. So we will be looking forward to those, probably the sample results, probably in October. The wastewater method for Legend Lab is only run in Minnesota, so they all have to go to Minnesota, and so anybody who uses Legend also goes to Minnesota. So we're in line with however many other wastewater systems that are out there. We have been in discussions with ADEQ about testing the biosolids, so the solids that come out of the wastewater treatment system. You get liquids on one side, and you get solids on the other. Our solids all go to the landfill. ADEQ we're kind of hesitant right now about testing those because they're really focusing on land application for biosolids. So we might be down the line, in line so those folks who are land applying are actually getting theirs tested first, because those will have a much more direct effect on aquifers than something in a lined landfill.
So when you talk about land applying, you're talking about people who buy the solids and then use them on crops?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Now we've moved on to the scope of work for our PFOS treatment systems. We've employed Waterworks to be our study manager. We met with them last week to kind of go over what our ideas are and how we want to approach it. We're looking forward to getting them really working on it, and they feel like they could have something this year that will give us an idea of direction to go, because really we're kind of throwing everything up in the air and trying to pinpoint something, but they're going to be able to give us a list and cost ratios on those treatment systems. Yes, sir.
The idea with Waterworks as the consultant there is that they're going to aid the city in identifying potential remediation going forward?
Correct. There's actually 3 different possibilities there. The first one is for PFOS and PFOS remediation. We're also going to study the arsenic remediation process and make sure we're being as efficient as we can with that. And thirdly, we'll be looking at some more infrastructure improvements out by the airport to make it a little bit easier and some flexibility for utilities.
Got it.
So
Thank you.
There's 3 different things.
I have a question. Are we working on trying to pinpoint the source of the contaminations?
At this point, we haven't put any effort into that. The first step is looking at the water, the wastewater influent and effluent. I think that will give us a better idea of where we stand in that. But at this point, we've been putting most, if not all, of our energies into attacking it at the wellheads.
Yeah, I was surprised that the Chino wells came back positive out there.
That makes several of us, yes. I think we were all very surprised to see
Steve?
that.
I have nothing.
Okay.
Thank you.
And one more thing, I think I already mentioned this. We already did some in-house sampling. We just conducted the August ones in August 19th and the 22nd, and that will be continuing every month, along with our arsenic samples. And so we will continually be bringing further and further information forward. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to stress, we're still talking about parts per trillion.
Yes, ma'am.
Here, and I'm personally have always drank Prescott water, and I have total confidence in our water. Any comments? Okay. All righty. Well, I'm glad to hear that we're continuing on our monthly. We have a monthly sampling program now.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I think it's important to keep on top of that, because things do fluctuate.
As we've seen from all of our different sample draws, yes,
Yes.
things are fluctuating.
And I'd also like to stress that it's very important on how those samples are collected, that everything is free of plastic, that the water doesn't come in contact with anything that might have an external source of PFOS.
Which, of course, is challenging because PFOS is everywhere. And so we've even gone to removing the dope tape that we have on the taps that we recover the samples from, because it potentially could have PFOS in it. So, yeah, we're taking a lot of different steps. We have a single sampler, a person who that's what he does. And he prepares himself when he goes to take samples of making sure he's not putting on sunscreen and lotions and certain soaps and other personal care products. All the bottles come from the lab prepared as they're supposed to be collected, and every sample has a trip blank, which is prepared at the same time with water that was provided by the laboratory. So it travels along with the other sample, and if the sample from the well comes back positive, then they always run the trip blank to make sure that it wasn't contaminated either by the sampler or during the trip. Even ice bags, just the ice packs, we can't use those. We have to use raw ice just to ensure that we're not having any contamination.
Wow, yeah. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the report.
Thank you.
That is it?
Okay, any more comments? Any public comment?
No.
Okay.
Public comment.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.